Hey everybody, I just thought I'd shoot another video real quick. I'm looking at doing a shorter clip this time just so I can test sending the audio out to people. The last time I went on a little long and the audio clip was higher than the amount that's able to send out through a message. So I'd like to be able to send this out a little more conveniently. I think I was able to send everything out with Dropbox, but when I was sending via Messenger, it was a little bit harder to condense everything and keep the uh, keep the quality high. So I'm probably just going to dive in real quick and just do a little something, maybe 10 minutes or so. One of the topics that I was going to kind of brief today, it's going to be one of the topics that I'd like to explore later, maybe in a session, is creation stories from around the world. I think they're very fascinating. There was a coworker I had before at a previous job, my last, I'm trying to think, I guess it was the job I was doing before the current one I have now. And she was helping me handling files. Like I was doing a lot of the files for the court, and she was coming in to help out a few days a week. And she and I would be back in the file area, just kind of putting stuff away, and we'd get lost in conversation sometimes. And she had a lot of pretty fascinating input. Uh, really brought up all kinds of different topics, and we were talking about podcasting. I think she does a lot of work at home. I can't remember what she did. I think it was fashion related, if I remember correctly. But we would get into all kinds of different conversations and stuff. And she mentioned that I should do a podcast. She was one of the people that kind of planted the idea in my head, and she said it would be a good idea to do for me to do one on creation stories. And I thought it was kind of funny because I don't really know that much about too many different creation stories, but I think we were talking about. I think we were comparing the Greek myth with Egyptian a little bit, and kind of Judeo-Christian tradition that we're kind of used to hearing here in the Western world. I thought it sounded kind of cool. I wish I had more input right now, but I think that with the right guest, maybe with the right people along with me on the set, we could really put something together. I could do a little bit more research before I dove into it. Hold on just one second. I think this is giving me an echo that I didn't really want to have. Let's see here. I don't know. I think that's better. No, still got that. Still kind of got that. Almost like a. Okay. I think that's a little bit better. All right. And again, with the phone recording, you probably won't be able to tell the difference anyway. But with the mic, it's got kind of an echoey sound. But we'll see how it plays back. Again, not the most important thing. Um, but yeah, I thought it would be something to dive into that would be really fascinating. I went to Catholic school growing up, and so I heard everything through the lens of the uh, the Catholic the Catholic viewpoint as far as creation goes. So it's going to be the Judeo-Christian model. The Something that I found interesting was that I was in seventh grade. Again, Catholic school, but I was in seventh grade, and in our literature, like our English class, the teacher assigned an abridged version. It's kind of a project too. We went on it for a couple, at least 2 months, I think, and maybe longer. And it was Greek mythology. We read the Odyssey. Obviously, it was a textbook, condensed, abridged version, much cleaner. I didn't realize how dark some of those Greek myths were until I started branching out on my own reading them. Because when I learned it in school, I thought, oh wow, there's some out there stories, but dark. Some of those stories, in terms of learning human psychology, the lines that they're able to draw are pretty grim sometimes, but also very, very accurate. Um, anyway, we were studying Greek mythology, and it was just the Odyssey, so a completely foreign story in terms of what we were used to learning. But I really took an interest in it, and I think in seventh and eighth grade, I really went off and started looking at some of those stories on my own. A lot of them were children. My mom got me this book. It was the Greek myths, and it was like a children's book, I guess. Which, I mean, not for like little, but I guess age appropriate. And it kind of went through all these different like myth by myth kind of thing. But just real quick though, it's like one page each. So I mean, you're not getting the full detail in every in each story, but um, I think it was a page or two each. I mean, some of them a little longer than others, but one of them was this great flood, and I thought, oh, wow, and it was very like eerily similar to the flood of the Noah's Ark. I think there was even an ark in the story. It's Deucalion is the protagonist in this story, and he's the son of Prometheus, who's the kind of the kind of the father of humankind, I guess, in Greek myth. Brought fire to the earth. Uh, but yeah, Deucalion and his wife had this myth, and Zeus had calls this great flood because he's not not happy with human beings at the time. So the restoration came when he's throwing stones behind his head, or I think in the myth they said throw the bones of your mother behind you, and that in that in Greek myth, mother is earth. So, um, but again, very very similar to just this idea of there's a big flood, and then there's a recreation of humanity, almost like a a second chance for human beings. And again, just very similar to the Noah story. I mean, this one probably came before the Noah story. I guess I don't really know because going back in the Jewish tradition, it's hard to say when each one was written. But I think even in the Egyptian mythology, there's a creation story that's very similar with that. And I wonder, part of me wonders, and this is kind of strange, but part of me wonders like why a flood? What there must have been some great uh, disaster, that had to do with water. Maybe there were ice age. There was an ice age before. Maybe it was the thawing of the ice that caused this huge. I don't know. But there must have been some seismic event that caused all of these different um, religions, mythologies around the world to focus on this as a crux of human civilization. But I was kind of thinking like maybe it's just this idea of the biological human being and itself. We're before we form, we're swimming in this womb, I guess, trying to become fertilized, and eventually it happens. But it's a deluge before anything ever does come. I don't know if there's any connection there, but it's something I've thought of too because it seems to be a of central focus in in our story. So a lot of the myths, I kind of perused a few of them, and I just noticed that there were some of them were more violent than others in terms of the creation. Some of them, I think it was Jainism, was there is no creation. There was no creation. Um, there's no beginning. There's no end. It's completely cyclical. It's always been. It always will be. And the only thing we do is change form, which something again I want to research a little bit more. It's very interesting, just different from what we're used to. The other there were other focus. The other focal points were the ancient elements, the four ancient elements of earth, air, water, and fire, which we use all the time now. I think that the in like your Western zodiac, it's earth signs are the more physical, grounded signs. The air signs are the more mental and intellectually focused signs. The water signs are the deeply emotional and intuitive signs, and the fire signs are the more um, like the more like transcendent and action oriented kind of signs. So it just represents the body, the mind, the heart, and the soul, respectively. But a lot of the myths focus on those four elements in some capacity. Something else I'd like to dive into more, very fascinating stuff. Some of them are like different parts of the world too. Some of them are more personified, like they use almost like their deities are more human characters or relatable human characters in a way. So then there's the Chinese, and then some of the East Asian myths where You have, I don't know if this is so much creation as much as it was later in the myth, but where you had like these multiple suns, just this earth was in such a quenched state that you needed some character to come along and bring balance. Balance is a pretty big theme in a lot of the Far East Asian myths. Just this idea that balance needs to be restored and being able to control the equilibrium between yin and yang kind of thing. So that's another thing that we could focus on as well in comparing some of these myths and trying to find. Um, I'd like to try to find some parallels. I think there are many of them. But yeah, just some of that stuff. Some of that stuff I find very fascinating. Again, it's something I'd have to do a little bit more, just a little bit more homework on before I could say that I'm speaking intelligently about it. But the other part is bring somebody on who just knows more about it than I do. I think that'd probably even be the better move, so that I could get a little bit more understanding there too. We all could. I mean, everybody could if we bring different ideas around. The other idea would be, I guess, if we're going to do creation, we could also do just this idea of, I guess, if it's creation, what happens after life, the afterlife, and heaven and hell. Those ideas. We're used to saying heaven and hell here in the West. Just real quick, I was looking at um, in Chinese mythology. I think it's. I guess it would just be. They have a lot of the temples. When I would go to a temple, when I was in Asia, I would go to a temple, and they would have the theme. You would see a lot of dragons represented. The dragon was like strong. It's the I guess it's the highest masculine characterization is the dragon, and the highest feminine characterization is the phoenix. So you see themes like that, but the other thing that I saw that really caught my eye was my wife and I went to a girlfriend at the time, and we went to the temple. Oh, what was it? Oh, it was a really cool temple, but I can't remember. There was a part of the temple that was called 18 Stages of Hell, I think is what it was. It was something like that, like 18 Stages of Hell. And I noticed when we were down there that there were tigers represented a lot more, almost as like the central deity in the representation. I was really confused because I thought, well, so tigers are the devil then? 'Cause I didn't know that because they're one of the 12 animals in Chinese astrology, and it's a very flattering story. Like the tiger is very highly heralded in Chinese myth, according to the great race that they had between the 12 animals. The tiger was third, but was kind of like a heroic third kind of thing. Um, so I was confused, like why is the tiger now the tiger's bad? It's like because my mindset was to equate it with what we have in our tradition, which is Satan being kind of the lord of the darkness, the lord of hell, I guess. And we see Satan obviously as the epitome of evil in that tradition, whereas in the Chinese myth, the tiger is the maybe seen as the arbiter of that world, but it's because he's representing the tiger is a representative of the punishment that's going to be delivered. So it's a good being. It's almost like a well, I don't want to say like a prison but it's he's bringing justice to evildoers is what the tiger would represent. So it's not like Satan where you're almost taking cues from Satan to do evil. And in this case, it would be like the tiger is going to deliver the punishment to you. The tiger is a force of good, and it just took me a minute to wrap my head around that because it's like, oh wow, I'm so used to thinking hell all bad, the the deity in hell or the the king of that world would be the epitome of bad, but in the other mythologies maybe it it's shown a little bit differently. So just something I thought was kind of fascinating. But we could get into different stories like that and how good and evil are represented. What it means to be good and evil, I think, would be a good discussion to have. Um, it's hard. It's hard. We live in a world where we're compromised. We're constantly compromised, whether it's morally or intellectually or in any other way. But especially morally, that's where it becomes a little bit more hard to hard to distinguish sometimes what's right and wrong. So, if we see a little bit about where we come from and where we all think we're headed or what the purpose of the whole thing is, maybe it might be a little bit easier to, maybe not easier, but we might be able to find a clearer picture on how to decipher what's right and wrong sometimes. But anyway, I wanted to shoot this real quickly. Just a quick topic idea that I wanted to throw out there. I probably didn't say too much of any substance in this past 15, 16 minutes, but if I could just get this out there and just see how it plays. All right, thanks guys. Have a good night.